The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our review of the player cards in the Dunwich Legacy Investigator expansion for the benefit of new players. This is part 1 of our Rogue review. We're going to take a look at Joey the Rat Vigil, Liquid Courage, Lone Wolf, and I'm Out of Here. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Just a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto-Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around, or are good in one particular deck, get a Bless token, while cards we believe are destined for the list of taboos or are simply bad for the game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these player card reviews. Speaking of amazing members of the community, Adam Fraser is the latest patron to embrace the darkness. Thank you very much, Adam, for your generous support. It is greatly appreciated. This channel has been a labor of love for the past 5 years, and it's always nice to find out that players like yourself find this content valuable too. I hope all your pulls from the Chaos Bag are Elder Signs. If you'd like to be amazing like Adam and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty for the amazing art that graces the channel, Nicole Fiscus for the new Whisper in Darkness logo that I use for the podcast, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the intro as well as the overlays. Thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to our reviews of the player cards in the Dunwich Legacy Investigator expansion for the benefit of new players. We are starting our reviews of the Rogue cards. In the box, we're going to start off with an ally. This is Joey the Rat Vigil, looking out for number 1 4-cost asset that has an intellect and agility skill icon, ally, and criminal trait. As a free triggered ability, you may spend 1 resource, choose an item asset from your hand, and play it, paying its cost. He has 3 health, 2 sanity, and takes up an ally slot. Thoughts about Joey?
I've always liked Joey. I've had a soft spot for Joey for some time. I know he's not as good as Leo, but I want him to be as good as Leo.
Yeah, let's examine what his ability actually does. You know, as I tend to say, if you squint real hard, I think what he really does is he gives you kind of an extra action but for a play, an extra action, but that action has to be used to play an item, kinda. You know, and you can do it more than once a turn. So it's like you're spending a resource to get an action, and that action has to be play. So
Specifically an item asset.
Yeah, specifically an item. So I guess we can look at cases where that is more useful than Leo DeLuca's just gain an extra action. So let's say you want to play a weapon without provoking an attack of opportunity. Joey's your guy. Yeah, I guess if you want to play like multiple weapons or multiple items for some reason, Joey's your guy.
Before we had started recording, Man from Lang had mentioned playing something like Cheris Keepsake during Mythos phase.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, mid-test or something. Yeah.
Joey allows you to play items outside of the normal turn order, which is unusual.
Yeah. So using Joey to put soak down, using Joey to put weapons down. So I guess what he lets you do is he lets you hang on to items in your hand until you absolutely need them. Yeah, which is nice. And you can put them down without provoking attacks of opportunity, which is also nice. So I guess the ideal use of Joey the Rat is if you had items that made you money, then you're in really good shape. You know, because you have to spend resources to play the item, and then you get that money back. Yeah.
Well, we had just reviewed Bob and Edge of the Earth, and Bob has Schaffner's catalog, so that could be
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, so you need like Joey the Rat and Schaffner's catalog. That seems to be the match made in heaven. So what do you go to Joey and he just hands you a Sears catalog and he says, you can just order what you want. Yeah. Turns out he's actually a multi-level marketing guy.
I don't know. I think he's okay. I would imagine that somebody at the table is going to play Leo DeLuca, and maybe there's somebody else that is also playing a rogue and also needs an ally. And I think Joey's a suitable a suitable ally.
Okay.
He has a
Yeah.
good amount of soak on him.
Oh
Like,
yeah, the three health soak is quite good. Plus, look at that artwork. He looks kind of like Sacha Baron Cohen, kinda.
Mhm. Yeah, I have to admit that I have never played Joey. When I am playing solo, I tend to gravitate towards Leo because I find the just having an extra action is a lot more flexible than having a free action that I can play an item. I think Joey gets better as your card pool expands because you have a lot more options for items, and certainly with the release of Bob Jenkins in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion, who is all about the items, Joey gets more interesting. There is a level 3 upgrade for Joey in Weaver of the Cosmos. Yeah, I've never really gravitated towards Joey. I've always played Leo, and I can appreciate the amount of soak and stuff like that. I guess Joey's real power is that you can break the turn order with his ability, which is, I guess, theoretically good, but again, I've just never really needed him.
Yeah, it's a tough one to make work really well because if you want to play Joey, he kind of makes you want to play a lot of items. But if you draw a lot of items and not Joey, it's kind of slow to put them out. Now, in your case, Mr. Lang, in True Solo, you probably want Leo DeLuca because you're going to be moving a lot and investigating a lot and fighting a lot and evading a lot. It sounds like you probably don't need lots of play actions,
Yeah,
which is what
I
Joey
tend
the
not
Rat
to
kind
play
of
a
gives
lot of
you.
cards, so having somebody who plays items for you, just items for you, is
Yeah.
not something not an effect I'm looking for all that often, to be honest.
Mhm.
I much prefer just having the versatility of the action that Leo gives me, and even though he is more expensive.
Okay. So yeah, I think the ideal case here is someone who has a lot of cheap items that you don't always want to put out there until you need them. So in the case of like Bob Jenkins or anybody who can, I mean, even Jenny Barnes to an extent, because Jenny Barnes can hang on to say leather coat until she needs the soak. So someone like Jenny who can like make a bunch of money and then play her weapons and play her items in the moment she needs them. I can see that working out with Joey for her.
yeah, he also lets you kind of dodge the double action tax of certain items, like the next card we're going to talk about. So he
Okay.
could be useful in that regard too, where you need to both play something and trigger its activation effect in the same
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah. Because two actions to play something and then immediately use it, it's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
So how would we rate Joey?
I've been debating between a bless token and a zero personally. I think that Joey's one of those cards that you could get benefit out of in most decks, but he's really one of those cards that rewards you for playing a particular playstyle. So
hmm
I think a bless token's the most appropriate rating for him.
I think in a full card pool, you're looking at a bless token. But I think in the card pool we're looking at of Core and Dunwich, I don't think there's just enough items to really make it work. So I think I'm going to give him an Elder Thing for this context.
You think so?
Yeah, because there's just not enough items.
I feel like
Yeah.
Wendy could make decent use out of it. I
Yeah,
feel
but
like
then you gotta say you've also got Leo DeLuca there standing by, for that 90% of the time, you know?
yeah, but
Mhm.
again, you sometimes you want to play four allies and you're gonna need a fourth one.
Yeah. Sticking with it though, sticking with my Elder Thing. It's just, it's very narrow and you kind of need a lot of cards to get there. I think in the core Dunwich, you just don't have enough.
I think I'm going to give Joey... Man, I have a tough time giving him more than an Elder Thing, simply because with Leo standing there next to him, I'd rather have the versatility of any action I want rather than one that's just limited for items. And I think Joey is probably one of those allies that gets a little better as your card pool grows and you have more items to choose from. I also find that typically you want to be playing items at the beginning of a scenario rather than later. And so Joey is one of those cards you really sort of want in your opening hand while you're setting up so you can get the most value out of his ability. Later, you're just sort of playing in a 4-cost ally for the soak once you're set up. So, I mean, there are tricksy things you can do with him, but I just feel like those situations are rare, whereas Leo is just blunt force. Here's an action, do with it as you will, whatever you want. And as a solo player, I much prefer that to having somebody like Joey at my side. The next card we're going to talk about is Liquid Courage. It's a 1-cost asset with a willpower skill icon, item, and illicit trait. Uses 4 supplies as an action. Spend 1 supply. Choose an investigator at your location to heal 1 horror. Then that investigator tests 2 willpower. If this test succeeds, he or she heals 1 additional horror. If this test fails, he or she discards 1 card at random from his or her hand. Thoughts on Liquid Courage?
This has to be Vase's pet card. I don't think I've ever played a game with him where he hasn't had this in his deck.
I can understand why. I mean, having some healing in your deck feels kind of important if you're playing multiplayer, especially because someone's going to go down in horror. That being said, I've played Liquid Courage a lot, but I find it's kind of slow. And one thing that's kind of ironic about Liquid Courage is that it's a rogue card, but rogues tend to be like kind of the worst at using it because you got to make that willpower test.
This has always been a card that he feels like he's gonna get the most bang for his buck, but then it really never does. It often feels like you just heal a horror, discard a card, and then you feel terrible.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one. Because of the skill test involved and the fact that it takes an action. It's also worth noting that later in the set, and I think it's worth comparing Liquid Courage to Smoking Pipe, which also heals horror but doesn't take actions, but deals you damage. So like the ideal case for Liquid Courage is that you put it down there and you spend 4 actions and you end up healing a total of 8 horror. That is quite a lot. Willpower tests are involved though. It's probably better than Clarity of Mind, right, Mr. Lang?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can get that extra healing out of it. I used to play this card quite a bit and then quit because it's a bad card for rogues. I mean, they get to heal a horror, but then they're going to probably fail that willpower skill test, and so you're never going to get that 1 additional horror, and you're going to discard a card. So I think the only reason to really play this as a rogue is if you are playing in multiplayer and you want to provide Liquid Courage to other players at the table. And as someone who predominantly plays solo, I'm never in that position. And so while this is, I think, better than a lot of the healing cards out there because you do have the option to get that second heal out of it, yeah, I did put this in my deck early on and then just took it out, and I haven't revisited it since. If you don't get that second heal out of it, it's pretty slow, and it's not particularly good for skids. You know, Wendy can maybe make some use out of it. Jenny, I mean, she's going testing 3v2. Skids is 2v2, Wendy's 4v2, I think, which is probably your best bet.
So one thing I will note is that if your card pool is only Core and Dunwich, you don't have a lot of options. So I remember we spent a decent amount of time discussing in our revised Core review about how Wendy Adams, she has very little Sanity Soak in like the Core set. And Liquid Courage can actually help with that. Remember, Wendy Adams, her signature weakness deals her 2 direct horror. So if she doesn't have access to a lot of Sanity Soak, then this starts looking pretty good because she can actually make that willpower test. The same might be true for Zoe Samaras because she can play this. Yeah, and she's got what, 4 willpower?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there might be something there if you're like Wendy or Zoe. If Zoe's looking for Sanity Soak, then her best option is probably Holy Rosary, but Holy Rosary takes up the same slot as her cross. So if you're trying to play the cross, you're kind of like you have like conflicts there. So maybe someone like Zoe, who just needs the sanity soak and would probably rather play this than Clarity of Mind. There might be something there in the small card pool situation.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe even like 2-player or multiplayer where you have Wendy on your team and then you also have Agnes. And Agnes,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Agnes
Yeah.
actively wants to take Horror to kill enemies. So you can like use this on Agnes to give her some much needed reprieve so she can keep using her ability. I could see that being pretty decent. And
Yeah.
Agnes has 5 willpower, so I mean she's gonna pass that test 90% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, she'll pass that test. Are there any cases in this card pool where taking a test is like a good thing?
There is a level 1 upgrade for this card in the Winifred Havamok starter deck. If you do enjoy playing this card, there is an option there. The illicit trait becomes a little more relevant as your card pool expands. It doesn't do very much right now, but there are cards like Fence down the road. I think probably Wendy or maybe Zoe has the best. If you're using it to heal yourself, then Wendy, Zoe, like you said, Agnes has a good chance of passing that willpower skill test. I think if you're putting this in your deck to heal a rogue or heal yourself as a rogue, man, it's just, you're going to have to probably commit cards to pass the skill test. And then if you fail, you're going to discard a card at random, which is like if it was
random.
If it was like choose a card in your hand and discard it, that would be better. But I mean, so you're going to commit a bunch of cards, you fail, now you're randomly discarding a card. I don't think it works in most of, in either really Skids or Jenny. How would we rate Liquid Courage?
I know Vase would give this a 0, so I gotta give this an Elder Thing. It's just too niche.
Yeah, I admit I have a soft spot for anything that helps the party, which I have a feeling Vase is thinking along the same lines. You can help others, but I can see if you're playing Leo DeLuca and you're like Wendy or maybe even Jenny, you've got extra actions. You can use those actions to help the team. I can see why you would play Liquid Courage in that case. So I think I'll give this a 0 as well, but for a different reason. I think for action-based healing, it's decent. It's better than Clarity of Mind for sure.
I'm going to give this one an Elder Thing. I don't really like this card, to be honest. It's a healing card. We already know how I feel about healing cards most of the time. I mean, the option to get an extra heal is nice, but I think the solo player in me here outweighs any sort of multiplayer considerations. Maybe if I was playing multiplayer, I would consider this to help somebody out at the table, but when I'm playing by myself, this is just not. If I'm playing a rogue, like a pure rogue, this is not happening. Mm-hmm. Maybe Wendy, but I mean, the problem is once your card pool expands even a little bit, Wendy has way better options, I think, than this. So, she gets the Cherished Keepsake and
right.
That between that and recursion, your sanity issues are pretty much solved. So not a huge fan of Liquid Courage. The next card is Lone Wolf. It is a 1-cost asset with an agility skill icon. Talent, limit 1 per investigator. When your turn begins, if there are no other investigators at your location, gain 1 resource. Probably one of the best rogue cards in the set, if not the best.
Yeah, there's not much to say about this card. It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so too. That being said, it is a little difficult to make work in a multiplayer game, but if your team is willing to work with you to like do turn order, you can actually get this to fire more often than you would think. Of course, it shines in 1 and 2 player because you're going to get that resource all the time, and who doesn't need resources?
Yeah, it basically turns any investigator into Jenny.
And then turns Jenny into double Jenny. It's like Doublemint Gum. Twice the green, twice the fun.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Really isn't much to say about this. If you get it early, you slam it down, you're going to feel great. If you draw it late, it's going to be terrible.
That being said, also, this doesn't feel bad to lose to Crypt Chill. You can lose this to Crypt Chill, can't you? Yeah. So
Easily,
if you get this down early, you put this down there, and it can also be your like your soak for Crypt Chill, and then what was that Dunwich Treachery that makes you shuffle something back into your deck, and then you have to like discard the top 3 cards of your deck.
I'll throw it up on the screen. It's yeah, I can picture the art, but I can't picture the name.
Yeah, there's like a guy going
yeah,
like the guy with unlimited power. Yeah, except it's shuffling things back into his deck.
yeah. Getting a steady drip of resources is pretty awesome. Obviously, the earlier you play this, the more you profit from it. I think probably the biggest issue with this card is just forgetting to take the resource, because it's one of the few things that happens when your turn begins. It's unusual in that respect. There aren't many effects that trigger when your turn begins, and so I have to always make a concerted effort to remember, like, take the lone wolf money whenever I'm playing.
Right. There are 2 cards that everybody forgets in this set: Lone Wolf and Peter Sylvester.
It is challenging to trigger in multiplayer, but like you said, Matastrophic, if you work with the other players at the table, as long as they sort of vacate where you are before your turn begins, you can still get the resource out of it. And the nice thing about Lone Wolf being in this particular set is that all of the investigators in the box can take it. And so if you are concerned about your resource generation, whether you're playing Guardian, Seeker, Mystic, or Survivor, you all have the option of putting a Lone Wolf in your deck. And it's not unique in any way, doesn't take up a slot, so if everybody wants to bring Lone Wolf to the game, more power to you. One of the decisions you have to make with Lone Wolf is whether to play 1 or 2 copies, because the second copy is kind of redundant. And so while you sort of want to play 2 because you want it down as early as possible, that second copy isn't going to be as valuable. So you have to sort of decide whether you're willing to sort of skimp on going down to 1 copy or not. I mean, it does have an agility skill icon, but that's not really a huge consideration. I mean, just getting 1 resource a turn is pretty amazing. And I found that when you get this down, you can really, it just sits there and suddenly you'll look up and be like, oh, I have like 15 resources. How did that happen? And any resource issues you were expecting to have for the game are basically gone. How would we rate this one?
I'm going to give this an Elder Sign. This card is really good. It's one of the few cards that I feel solves a really critical problem for a lot of investigators like Zoe. Being able to generate additional resources is so valuable. And since every investigator in the box can take this card, it's just such a great way to have access to more resources.
Yeah, I think between solo play, where this is great, Zoe, where this is great, Jim, where this is great, Jenny, which is like actually really good, because what's better than 2 resources a turn? 3 resources a turn. Yeah, I think I'm going to give this thing, especially in the context of Core and Dunwich, I think it's definitely an Elder Sign. When your card pool expands and you have more options and you have the ability to fill more of your deck slots with resource generating cards, then I think it loses stock. But in this context, I think it's an Elder Sign, because you don't have that many resource options until you hit Hot Streak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, and this card pool also has a lot of the talents and that you're probably still playing in your deck, and this just turns into free stat boosts, which is great.
That's right. Outlet for you have a nice outlet for your resources. Yeah, I think this is an Elder Sign card. If you're playing a rogue, or even if you're playing any of the Dunwich Investigators and you can take this card, consider it.
Yeah, this is an easy Elder Sign for me. When I'm playing solo and I'm looking for off-class cards, you can't really go wrong by making sure your resource generation is taken care of. There is a bit of a timing issue. You do try to want to get this down early, but if you do, your resource issues are going to be solved for the remainder of the game, as long as you remember to take that resource at the start of your turn, which I know I have forgotten on occasion, and I'm probably not the only one, just because there aren't that many triggers at the start of your turn. So, but yeah, you can't really go wrong, and it is nice that it is in this box with the Dunwich Legacy Investigators. I have been playing this recently in a Jim Culver deck, and it just makes everything a lot easier because you can afford things, which is fantastic. The next card we're going to talk about is I'm Outta Here. It is a free event that has 2 agility skill icons, the Trick and Spirit trait. Play only if there is a scenario card with the Resign ability in play. Resign. You get the hell out of here. This is a big thematic win for rogues. The 2 agility skill icons are awfully nice. It's free. You can play it from anywhere on the table, so this card can literally break certain scenarios in this game. Just thinking of Doom of Etsley for one, where you have to go into the catacombs and then make your way out. And what's better than making your way out than just leaving from the end location and basically bypassing half of the game? What do you guys think about this one?
I've always loved this card. I remember when I first was going through my collection of Dunwich cards and I read this card, and I just actually outwardly burst out in laughter. Great card.
Yeah, because it kind of, I'm not sure if the right term is breaking the fourth wall by saying you get the hell out of here, like in the game text. It's like, oh, great.
It
It's
definitely
not just...
feels like the developers were trying to be funny, and it
exactly
worked out really well. Yeah,
exactly.
Like it's not only a huge flavor win, but having this as a one-of in your deck is really quite good in a lot of scenarios. Just like you were saying, just being able to bypass so many obstacles when you need to resign is so good.
Yeah, this is a rogue movement card, really. This is one of those cards that kind of was supposed to solidify rogue as the movement class. Between this and elusive, and I think we're going to be talking about Think on Your Feet later on. This is kind of like rogue movement. Now, notice the rogue movement comes with asterisks next to it, where it's situation, where it's got limitations on when you can actually use it. But rogue movement tends to be really, really strong in the proper situation that it was designed for. And I think this is no exception. Yeah, it's hard to really think about this one, because if you want to win the scenario, quote unquote, you want to never play this. Well, there are still a few. There are a few cases like Doom of Etsley, the Asylum, not where Doom awaits. But
there's a bunch of scenarios that require.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, Midnight Masks.
Mm-hmm.
Although that one you can resign at any time, so never mind. Yeah, The Last King.
There's a bunch. I mean,
there actually is a
right?
bunch. Yeah, there's more. Oh wow, there's actually more than I thought. Scenarios where you actually want to resign.
I think within the context of the Dunwich Legacy, I mean, you've got extracurricular activity, which you want to resign. You've got The House Always Wins, where you want to resign.
Yes,
you've got
that's right.
Miskatonic Museum, where you don't really want to resign, but push comes to shove, you can. I don't think this plays a role in Essex County Express or Blood on the Altar. Undimensioned and Unseen, there is a resign option on the table from the beginning of the game. Yeah. So it can save you there. I don't think it works particularly well in Where Doom Awaits or Lost in Time and Space.
No, it works very well in multiplayer in Lost in Time and Space, actually.
Yeah,
because
if
the
you
map
get
shifts,
separated. Yeah.
Yeah. That I'm Outta Here is how you because the map shifts around, and so your route to resigning in where in Lost in Time and Space is not always doable. So being able to just I'm Outta Here is quite nice as the final action of the campaign.
Yeah. Plus, in every other scenario, it has 2 agility icons, so you can always just commit it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this to me is the ideal target for another card we're going to talk about, Adaptable, which lets you swap in level 0 cards. You can take this out for the scenarios you don't need it, put something better in, and then if you're playing a scenario where you may need to resign, you swap it back in. It's got 2 agility skill icons if you don't happen to need it, and away you go.
So in the art, the guy in the background, is the guy in the background chasing the guy in the foreground?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know
So,
what
like,
that glowing thing is.
Is that a
Are those
flashlight? It
more?
looks like a
Yeah, I
flashlight.
think it's more people.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's another person behind the one that can be seen.
Oh, I see it now. I wonder if this guy's running from the cops. Because that's because you see behind him, like to his left, there's another person with a flashlight. Yeah, it looks like he's being chased by cultists or something, or the police. Yeah. I wonder if anyone stopped to tell him that his backpack is open. So whatever he stole is gonna fly out of his backpack if he's not careful.
He stole the
Maybe that-
Necronomicon.
Yeah, maybe that's how you represent the fact that you drop your clues when you resign. Is like your backpack's open, and all the clues fall out.
Here you go.
There you go.
How would you rate this one?
I've always quite liked this card, especially with the combo with Adaptable that you mentioned earlier. I think within the context of Core and Dunwich, this is a pretty easy +1 for me. It's got good icons, it's got a good ability, and specifically within Rogue, you can always swap it out when you don't need it. And if you're not a rogue, it's got 2 agility icons.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think I'm going to give this a 0. And the reason why is if your deck can make good use of the agility icons, as in this is what will put you over to evade something that's difficulty 3, then it's pretty good. Like if you're, oh yeah, Agnes can't take this. But anybody who's agility 3 or higher, I think this works really well with. But if you're playing someone who can take this, but their agility is only like 2, then you're only going to really use it for the resign, which you may not always need. So someone like Rex with 3 agility, good. Someone like Zoe with less than 3 agility, not so good. So I think I'm going to give it a 0.
I'm going to give this one a bless token because I think this is just one of those cards that I want it in the deck for when I'm going to resign. If I know I'm going to play a scenario that I want to resign, I want this in my deck. Otherwise, I feel like there are better options. And so that's why I tend to... I'm gravitating towards a bless token for this one because I feel it's really sort of scenario specific a lot of the time. That's going to do it for part 1 of our look at the rogue cards in the Dunwich Legacy Investigator expansion. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Any final thoughts on these cards?
This was a neat batch to actually open up our rogue review with. Because these cards are kind of like funky. You have Joey, which is like kind of specific, but can do cool things. Liquid Courage, it's kind of middling, but we've discussed when it's useful and when it's not useful. Lone Wolf, great. I'm Out of Here, fun. These are not like straightforward cards. I think this is a good batch to start with.
Yeah, I think that rogues get a lot of, fun cards where it's something like Joey, he may not be Leo, but he can definitely break the turn order in interesting ways if you're looking for something like that. Lone Wolf is just good, and I'm Out of Here is one of those that really, if you play it at the right time, it wins a scenario for you. So it has the power to be exceptionally powerful, especially in scenarios like some of the ones we see later, like Doom of Etsley, where having to go in and trek out can be a real chore. Or even if you're playing Dunwich, Lost in Time and Space, that scenario, you can have locations disappear out from underneath you, and then you have to make the long trek back to the resign location. And if you've got I'm Out of Here, it's taken care of. You can be at the starting location and you're fine, because it doesn't care where that resign ability is on the table. So I think it's probably one of those cards that's better once you've played scenarios a couple times and you know when it's going to be useful, rather than, I think if you're doing a blind playthrough, I'm not necessarily sure I'd put that card in my deck, but certainly later on, once I know what to expect, it's quite valuable. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.